There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews. I want to welcome you to another fantastic episode today. I'm excited about my guest. He's a good friend of mine, so I can't wait to get to that. But for those of you who, if it's your first time listening to the Productive Podcaster podcast, I want to welcome you, and I want to make sure that you share this with all your friends on all your podcast platforms. And of course, you can watch us on YouTube as well. Go to Productive Podcaster. Make sure you check us out and share it with everybody. Subscribe. We look forward to it. We welcome you. So for those of you, if it's your first time, or those of you second or third time, I'll go over it again with you. What we do at the Productive Podcaster is we do a show to showcase podcasters, but the show is to help you as the potential podcaster, as the new podcaster, as the old podcaster, to give you ideas and innovative things to hit your mind to make you think, you know what, I could do that for my podcast. This could work for my podcast. Or I can do a podcast because I feel empowered, because I feel confident now, because I learned something from someone else. A lot of times, me as being a productivity specialist, I work with people who aren't being productive in their ideas or their business because they haven't stepped into the world of podcasting. They're afraid to do so because they think it has to be perfect. It has to be one way or the other. It has to be cookie cutter. I'm going to tell you there's a podcast out there about anything you can imagine. Trust me on that one. And what I want to do is bring to you different people, different ideas, different things to showcase to you so that you can say, you know what, I can do a podcast. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to change some things about my podcast. I'm going to add some things about my podcast because I can be a productive podcaster. So that's what we want to do here on the Productive Podcaster. Now, I want to come to my favorite way to start a show, and you all know what that is. That's right. It's my segment called Pros and Cons.
Pros and Cons.
Now, for those of you who don't know what pros and cons is, it is my way of showing you that there are some productive things you can do on for your podcast to make it look a little better, to make it sound a little better. And there are some things that you aren't doing that may stop you. So the pros and cons today is about getting your voice out a little bit better. One thing you can do is do scales to warm up your voice for your pitch. That's right. You can practice your voice. Now, I know before I mentioned to you about working on your throat, but you can work on your voice. You see, here's the thing. For those of you who may know me, I actually sing a little bit. And I sang for some years in bands and so forth. But the thing I want to tell you is that you have different registers in your voice. Some people sing from their chest. Some people sing from their head. And when you sing from your head, it can come to a higher pitch. When you sing from your chest, you get that lower register. You can feel it in there. But a lot of singers, they sing from their head and they can get different ranges. You should practice that. Because guess what? As a podcaster, you are an entertainer. People are relying on your voice. People are counting on your voice to get out there. So one thing you can do, and I know you've done this when you were in school and music class, you practice the scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You know, you've done all that. So what I want to tell you is that you can practice that now because your voice is your instrument right now. Your voice is your tool. And you don't want to get on the mic and then all of a sudden, as you sound like this when you're talking, then you get on the mic and sound like this because you didn't warm up your voice. All I want you to do is to practice warming it up. Make sure that you sound professional. Make sure that you sound clear. Make sure that you sound like someone that someone really just wants to listen to. Because if you don't practice these things, if you don't warm up these things, you take your voice for granted, I'm telling you, you're going to find a time where it costs you because you are not prepared for it. So just practice those things, get your voice ready, do your scales, and be ready to perform when the time has come. So that's today's segment of pros and cons. So guys, guess what? We're going to take a break right now. And when we come back, I'm going to bring on one of my good friends, and he's going to show you some things about how to climb your own little mountain. We'll be right back right after this.
You've heard the rumblings. You even thought about starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all of the hard work for you so that you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews. And as I said before the break, I'm bringing on a good friend of mine. I've known this man for years. He and I are a dubbed black belt speakers. We'll tell you about that another time. But this is my partner. This is my buddy. This is my friend. And he is doing something to help a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people that just want to achieve more to get to your summit. And I'm bringing on nobody other than my man, Mr. Cicone Prince. Cicone, welcome to the Productive Podcast, my man.
Barrett, I want to thank you for having me, man. I appreciate you allowing me to be on your show.
Oh, no, thank you, man. Because you have a podcast called Next Level Leadership Summit. I love that, man. Tell us about your podcast, man.
Well, my podcast is really geared to helping people to understand that they can be a better and more effective leader. The podcast is really birthed out of our summit, which is Next Level Leadership Summit. And we really want people to understand that once you've learned how to lead yourself, the next logical step is to learn how to lead others. And so that's why we put together this podcast, and it's a weekly podcast, and it has some incredible information that helps you to see how you can be a more effective leader.
Now, I can't let you go further without talking about your summit. You do this summit every year, and it's incredible. You get some big names to come in to speak at your summit. Tell us about the summit.
Well, our summit was originally called, Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain? And that was more of a personal development summit because it was about finding your true purpose, which actually went with my Amazon award-winning best-selling book of the same name, Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain? So I basically took the book and turned it into a summit. But one of the reasons for the name change is because, especially when you start dealing with corporations, trying to get them to actually agree to have their employees come to Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain Summit? That could be kind of a problem and troublesome because people come there and be like, hey, I'm at the wrong job. I quit. So that would not be good. So in fact, we actually went into some rebranding and we changed the name to Next Level Leadership Summit because the reality is once you've learned how to lead yourself, once you've learned your own purpose, then one of the responsibilities that come with that is showing people how to find theirs. And that takes leadership. And that's why we transformed the summit from Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain to a Next Level Leadership Summit. And our summit is generally held every year in October, around the first or second week of October. And we have speakers come in and talk on different subjects. This year, because we've changed the format, we're talking about 7 areas or 7 categories of leadership. Inner leadership, outer leadership, corporate leadership, organizational leadership, male leadership, female leadership, and youth leadership.
Wow.
And so with all those categories, we want to make sure that we covered every aspect of leadership.
I think
If you have a second, I can actually tell you a little bit about each of those, because I know there are some questions that surround those.
Please do.
Okay, so inner leadership is leading oneself. It's learning how to lead yourself when no one else is looking, when no one else is around, when you're not doing it for applause, but you're doing it for the cause. Outer leadership is leading others. Now, somebody say, well, why would you have outer leadership when you have corporate leadership and organizational leadership? Well, outer leadership is leading in a crisis. Leading in a crisis, which means you weren't elected for the position, you weren't hired for the position, but somebody needs to step up. It may be a situation where there's a tornado drill or an actual tornado, or unfortunately a fire, and you're in a building and no one seems to know how to get out. You have to step up and lead. So outer leadership is leading in a crisis, knowing how to calmly control your emotions and help people get to where they need to be. But then you have corporate leadership. That's leading for a profit. That's looking at the bottom line. What can we do to actually increase our impact, not only for the company, but for the community that we serve? So that's corporate leadership, leading for a profit. Now, organizational leadership, that's leading for a cause. And that means that you rally people around a particular cause. That could be a nonprofit, that could be a church, that could be any sort of organization that's volunteer, because there's a different set of dynamics with leading those people, because nobody's being paid, they're volunteering. So you have to take a different approach in leading an organization than you do for a corporation. Now, this is where somebody told me I was going to get in trouble, because I broke out male leadership and female leadership, because I honestly believe that there's a distinct difference that comes with leading those two types of people. There are different dynamics and different dominating traits when you're dealing with males and dealing with females. So male leadership, we said, that's leading with logic. Now, that's not to say that women aren't logical, but it's not the dominating trait. When it comes to men, that's one of the things that men want to give me the facts, give me the figures. Let me find out what it is, what are the facts, so I can make a decision based on that. Well, female leadership is leading with heart, and that doesn't say that men don't have heart, but it says what is the dominant trait. Females are generally concerned about heart-centered issues. And so understanding that, because you can't take the same approach you would lead a group of males and try it on females and then wonder why it's not working. So that's why I broke those two out. So male leadership, leading with logic, not to say that women don't have logic. Female leadership, leading with heart, not to say that men don't have heart. But I wanted to distinguish those two, because that really helps you in leading those different groups. And the last one is youth leadership. And that one we call leading with hope. That means you help the youth to understand that, look, the future is yours, but you have to prepare now, because you're going to be stepping into the roles that we're in right now. So helping them to have the hope to change what they don't like. Every revolution, in fact, my daughter, she had this shirt on the other day, every revolution was in the hand of the youth, the young people. Why? Because they are inheriting the future. Somebody once said that children are 40% of our population, but they're 100% of our future. And so if we help them to understand the importance of having not just hope, but then doing what's necessary to change or to shape and to craft the future, then they'll be more apt to do that. But if they don't have any hope, I mean, there's nothing worse than seeing a young person that's hopeless. So we wanted to make sure that we covered all of those aspects. And it's worth your time. If you haven't already, in fact, you can still even check out the information at nllsummit.com.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, as you all can see, the man is passionate about what he does. So guess what? You think that translates in this podcast? You bet it does. So the thing is, if you take a listen to his podcast, I guarantee you're going to pick up that same passion. And I bring that up because some of you out there watching or listening right now, you are passionate about something. You should be. Everybody should be passionate about something. But you're passionate about something, and you're wondering, well, can you put that into a podcast? Well, Cicone Prince just showed you that you can do that. He showed you can do, because some of you out there are speakers or consultants or coaches or trainers or whatever, and you have a certain platform. You can see his platform. It comes through, and he's turned that into a podcast. Now, I want to ask you, Cicone, as far as turning the next level leadership into a podcast, what challenges did you run into?
Well, one of the major challenges I ran into was keeping things relevant. Now, oftentimes people want to like just do a bulk load of podcasts, and you can do that for a series. But one of the things I've learned is that it's almost like the news. You know, you want to make sure that and what you're sharing is timely, that it meets the need of the day. And sometimes there are some issues that you just can't get around, and you have to deal with them head on. You know, anybody that doesn't address the pandemic, that's not talking about it, I mean, that's front and center. It's in everybody's face.
It is.
And so being able to figure out how does that affect what you're trying to do or your audience, or is that one of their pain points? And then speaking to that in a passionate way, it makes it more relevant, and people gravitate towards that, as opposed to you pretending like there's nothing going on. Everything is fine. Everything's right. Let's focus on this. No, if people are hurting, if people are dealing with challenges, if people are going through stuff, having that ability to connect with them where they are, it really drives traffic to your podcast, and it makes people want to share it because they see just how much you care. Like somebody once said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if they can see that you're not somewhere with your head in the sand, that you are addressing the issues, be however tough they are, then they will say, okay, I can actually trust this person. I can actually listen to this person because this person gets me. This person sees where I am and they feel me. And making that communication. I was listening to a podcast just before we started, where a good friend of mine, Wonder Graham, he talked about selling is nothing more than a transfer of emotions. He said, if I can get you to feel the same way I feel about something, and you have the means and the need, you'll buy every time. And so even with your podcast, getting your audience to actually feel the way you feel about what you're passionate about, it really translates to them, and it actually puts them in a place to where they are more willing to purchase your products or service. So
yeah, now I gotta reach out the window now. So
okay, yeah.
But no, and it's funny because the one thing I love about hosting the Productive Podcast is that I learn things, and it gives me different ideas and light bulbs go, because you just taught me something that I can use and I can post or whatever, is that your podcast can be one of two things. It can be either timely or timeless. Because I interviewed a friend of mine, Hamid Elmyar. He's a doctor. He talks. His podcast is about health issues. So of course, as you mentioned, he's been talking about the pandemic, the coronavirus, COVID-19. He's been talking about that, and he's been interviewing different physicians from all over the world. And the great thing about it, now see, that's timely. But what happens when the virus is gone? Well, his podcast is on health. That's timeless.
Right, exactly.
So you have a choice. Now he happens to have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
His is timely and timeless. But you have to make a decision as a podcaster, what's yours going to be.
Right.
You heard Cicone say he wants his to be timely because it has to keep up with the times. Right. Now, mine is on productivity as far as being a podcaster, so it's timeless. Right. But you have to make a choice. If you're going to do a podcast, that's one of the things that you need to know going into it before you start it. What is your podcast going to be? And that not what it's about, but is that topic going to be timely or timeless? Now, Cicone, I want to ask you, as far as putting together your podcast, is it something that you found easy or challenging when it comes to as far as bringing guests to talk to?
Well, actually, up until this point, I haven't had any guests because I've had a lot of content to share in reference to leadership. Okay. I am going to, once I get past my current summit, in fact, because I'm having soon, I'm actually going to open it up to where I actually start having guests come on and actually speak. Now, don't tell anybody. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be literally interviewing them for a potential speaker slot at my future summit. So they don't know that. They don't know that. But
I look forward to my interview. Okay.
But once I get them on the podcast, I'm gonna look for their passion. I'm gonna look for their information. I'm gonna look for their ability to deliver. And if they fall in all those categories, if they hit all three of those marks, they are going to be on the short list for being invited to be a speaker at my live event. Of course, once we get them live again. But still. But see, you never know who's watching. You never know who's listening. And so that's why you have to show up at your best at all possible times, because your next big breakthrough could be just a podcast away.
Yes. And I would be remiss if I did not mention to everyone that you are also a publisher.
Yes.
Please, I'm going to give you a chance to showcase yourself a little bit. So tell them about that real quick.
Well, I have actually written 4 books. The first one was Are You Smart Enough to Play Dumb? A Guide for Running and Starting a Small Business. The second one was Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain? And it was about actually finding your true purpose. The third one was more personal. It was entitled Shooting from the Hip. 7 life lessons I've learned from my total hip replacement. Because yes, I've had a total hip replacement. And I'm not ashamed of it, because I know that there are things that we can learn even through those processes. The fourth one was Knowing When to Jump, Determining the Best Time to Take Your Leap of Faith. And my 5th book, I am super excited about this one. This one is called Leadership That Lasts. And it has 10 enduring principles to leave a lasting legacy. And so I am super stoked, because that book, even as I've been writing it, I actually said to myself, I didn't know I had this much in me. And I'll be honest with you, I know that it was God-given, but I was still blown away by the fact of stuff that I've been through and I've gone through. And it's almost like the orange. You really don't know how much juice is in it until you squeeze it. Well, that's what I've been doing. I've been squeezing myself and pouring myself into this book. And I'm blown away with the amount of information and the stuff that I'm sharing. And so,
And in your magazine.
Oh, yes. Can't forget Next Generation Speakers Magazine. Now, that I actually started back in March of 2019. And even when I got the idea for it, I was really like, God, why are you giving me this? There are so many other magazines. He said, just do what I told you to do. Make this magazine. And Next Generation Speakers Magazine is a platform for speakers to showcase who they are and what they're doing. And it's all digital, it's all online, and it is incredible, because the platform I'm using allows for you to have links in the magazine. Not only is there a cool page turner animation when you click on the pages, but when pages open, any links on the page highlight. Nice. You can click on the page, you can go purchase a book, you can go to a landing page, you can go to a Facebook group, you can go to a website, you can even link it to videos. So anything that you want to showcase can be shown in the book. So if you have a book launch coming up, if you have a conference coming up, if you have a Facebook group that you want people to join, if you have a commercial, a video that you want to show, all those can be showcased in the magazine. And again, it's free to read and it's free to share. So there's nothing holding anybody back from actually reading it and sharing it out with their friends.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, Cicone Prince, before I let you go, please tell everybody the name of your podcast and where they can find you.
Well, the name of my podcast is NLL Summit. Well, the name of the podcast is Next Level Leadership Summit, but it can be found on anchor.fm/NLL Summit. That's anchor.fm/NLL Summit. But it's also available on Spotify as well as Google Play. But it is a podcast. I will warn you, if you're not ready to actually be an effective leader, don't listen to it. Don't listen to it. But if you are ready to take your game to the next level, you definitely want to check that one out.
He warned you, so be ready to move up, to take it to the next level. Cicone Prince, I want to thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcasting. He's going to stick around, guys, because I want to have him come up for our next segment. But we're going to be right back with more of the Productive Podcaster right after this break.
You've heard the rumblings. You've even thought of starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all the hard work for you so you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or just go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. Did I tell you it was great? I love when I prove myself right by bringing on guests that perform. Cicone Prince is here, and he is here to help us with our next segment, guys. And what's our next segment? You know it. It is PodQuest.
PodQuest,
that's right. So we are going to take a question from somebody who is a member of our Facebook group. That's right. You can go to the Productive Podcaster Facebook group. That's right. The Productive Podcaster Facebook group. And you can put in your question there. And what we will do is we will showcase the person who asked the question. We will just, some of you don't want to have your name on, but we would actually answer your question for you. The question we have today, Cicone, and I'm going to let you answer it first, is, do I need a lot of money to start a podcast? So I'm going to let you take that right there.
The short answer is no, you don't.
Look,
the longer answer is no, you don't.
That makes it longer.
No, you don't. What you need is a willingness to put in the work. I mean, all of us have smartphones, and they have high definition cameras on it. They also have incredible audio. You get in a quiet place, you can record your podcast on your phone, and you can actually upload it to a site via your cell phone. So to get started, no, it doesn't take a lot of money. Even if you're doing a video podcast, you get enough lighting. I'm laughing because when I first started doing my weekly videos, and this was before I started my podcast, I was sitting in my car, and somebody, Forrest Lamb, he always reminds me of this. He reminds me of how I told him I would take my cell phone and with the rubber band and hook it to the visor on my car. I would get in the car, close the door, and put the cell phone up there, and I would hit record. And that's how I started my videos. I was in a quiet environment. I had enough light coming in from all of the windows and stuff, and I just got started. Somebody once said you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to start to be great.
Amen.
And so you just have to have a willingness to put in the work and to find a way. We have access to so much technology right now that there is nothing keeping anybody from starting their own podcast. So again, the long answer is no.
And he's 100% right. The short answer and the long answer is right. You do not need a lot of money to start a podcast. To be honest with you, I don't think you need any money to start a podcast. To be honest.
No.
But
yeah.
There's some people who want a certain level of production. So yeah, you
Right.
can still you're still going to have to spend some money to do that.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be a lot of money. It doesn't
Right.
have to be a lot of money. And there are ways to monetize your podcast so that you get your money back.
Yes.
So you can do all of those things. You can do that without having a big name. You can do that without having a large audience. You can do all of those things and get your money back and monetize it and so forth without having to spend a lot of money. So as Cicone said, the long answer is no. You don't need a lot of money. So Cicone, I want to thank you, buddy, for joining me again on the Productive Podcast. I appreciate you participating, and I look forward to working with you again real soon. You know how we do.
Yes, sir. And I want to thank you again for having me, man. This has been a great time and a great experience because it's allowed us a chance to clear up some stuff, even when it comes to doing podcasts.
Amen. It does. So thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, man.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. So, guys, now it is time for a segment that I love. I love all my segments on Productive Podcaster, but I love this segment as well. It is my podcast profile. My podcast profile is where I profile a podcast out there that I've listened to that I happen to enjoy, and I think you might too. And this one is called California City. It's by Emily Guerin, and it's a little espionage, little money, power, deception. I think you guys would enjoy it. California City by Emily Guerin. Check out the podcast. I think you will like it. And tell Emily I said hello. Okay, so I think you guys will like that. Check out the podcast profile, California City with Emily Guerin. So guess what, guys? It's time for the giveaway. That's right. It's time for the giveaway. Today, I'm giving away an audio book. That's right, my audio book of my best-selling book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? It is going to Malika Starr. She gets the audio book of my best-selling book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? How do you get a giveaway yourself? Join the Facebook group. We pick out someone from the Facebook group, and that person can get a chance to get the giveaway. What's the Facebook group? The Productive Podcaster. So all you have to do is go to the Productive Podcaster, actually join the group, and we'll get you in there so that way you can get in the giveaway as well. Congratulations, Malika Starr. So before we close the show, guys, I always like to do one of my favorite subjects, and that is my productivity quote. Now, the funny thing about today's productivity quote, I usually have one prepared that I like to go over, but you know what? Today, I got a text message from my friend, and I'm gonna give her a shout out, my friend Vera Dudley Kaiser. She sent me a text this morning, and I said, well, this is a perfect quote for the Productive Podcaster. And the quote reads, I don't know who it's by, but I'm gonna give Vera credit. It says, don't let your fear of what could happen make nothing happen. Ooh, let me say that again so y'all hear it in the back. Don't let your fear of what could happen make nothing happen. I don't think there's a better way I can end this show for those of you who are thinking about doing a podcast. Make it happen, guys. Make it happen. So on that note, I want to tell you guys, make sure you're sharing out the Productive Podcaster. Make sure you're telling everybody to subscribe. Make sure that you help us grow this community. Make sure you listen in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeart, all of them. Tune in. We're there and on YouTube as well. We want to see you there. We want to welcome you there. So make sure that you're a part of the Productive Podcaster tribe. I want to thank my guest today, Cicone Prince, for joining me as well. Hey, guys, as I always say, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all and take action. I'll see you next time on the Productive Podcaster. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.